All right. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. Joined here by my guest, Sven, and we are going to discuss democratizing software engineering with cloud-based dev environments. And our tagline for today's show is making sure developers are always ready to code. Sven is co-founder and CEO of GitPod. He has been working on developer tools his entire career, building IDEs, frameworks, and programming languages. He's also the father of two boys and lives at the coast of the Baltic Sea in northern Germany. So welcome to the show, Sven.
Hi, Jim.
Great to have you. I want to kick off by talking about your current business focus in GitPod. Can you lay some foundation for us and help us understand what you do at GitPod, or rather what the company does, and we'll get into what you do as well.
So what the company does is we automate development environments for software engineers. What that means is software engineers until today still, do work on their local machines, like with a very complicated setup that they have manually pulled together. For every project, it's different and so on. And GitPod allows teams to automate this process such that you can always, you get always a dev environment that is complete and works out of the box, and it is prepared and it runs in the cloud.
Okay, great. And what's the commercial use case? What is the end result you're looking for? I mean, just obviously it's much more efficient. So is the focus on time savings, or kind of what's the end result you're looking for?
There are many benefits with this approach. Developer velocity is important. Developers are, the main value creators in the world in all kinds of industries now. So if we can shave off a couple of hours a week, then there's a lot of value in that. But then also things like security or reproducibility of development situations are super important. Team aspects, like development today is like very automated already. Like you have these CI/CD pipelines, DevOps pipelines, where you put in a code change and then goes through the pipeline and until it lands in production. But there is this black box that is development, actually, where people start coding. That is something you do out of outside this pipeline. So you do that locally, and there's no insight, no observability. You don't really know what happens with the source code there. There's a local copy on machines floating around. So GitPod basically moves this black box, into the process and allows teams to manage that and have really observability into this process.
Okay. As I mentioned off air, I'm not a developer myself, but I do know that there's sometimes a general apprehension towards adopting new tools. So how has that gone for you, and what has been your experience in getting developers to adopt this technology?
Yeah, there are different camps. Like, of course, we have early adopters who just immediately understand the idea and are jumping on. And then on the other side, we have people. I think the biggest concern is that, I have to give up my local development environment. My setup is something very personal, very individual. A lot of engineers, kind of define themselves over, how they have set up their bash shells and things like that. And it takes a bit of, education or communication to tell them, hey, there's a lot of value, if you can now share this with your colleagues, because your colleagues will benefit from this, this awesome setup that you have there. Yeah. And you can even version that in Git now, and you get that no matter on what machine you are sitting. You can just, especially in these times where a lot of people work remotely or sometimes go to an office, you don't have to carry a machine with you, a powerful laptop or even a desktop computer, because you can just use any laptop. The workload runs in the cloud. You can even use an iPad or a Chromebook.
Wow, that's appealing.
Yeah. So that's the side of where we see developers sometimes have a hard time to go into the step, because what we propose is really a change in how you develop software. It's changing significantly, because we really move that into the cloud and we fully automate that, and you no longer have to mess around with your local machine too much.
That's great. So it's probably useful to you then to have brand advocates, so customers or users that love your product and are, like you said, willing to share it with their colleagues to sort of help it catch on. So has that been going fairly well? Are you guys developing a good number of brand advocates to spread the message?
Yeah, I mean, that is key. But it works. It works really well. Yeah, we have a really good community with lots of very vocal people in there, and then also the people we hire, they are usually really fans of the product, very entrepreneurial perspective on that, and also. So yeah, that is going really well. So there's a lot of love for the idea and for the product and for the vision.
Okay, that's great. So at this stage, and it looks like, according to LinkedIn, you started the company in about July of last year. Is that roughly correct?
Yeah, so we founded the company GitPod around that time, and it is a spin-off of we developed the GitPod, the technology that it's not so easy to build something like that. So we've been working on that for almost 3 years now. And we did that in another company that I founded 5 years ago called TypeFox, which is a consulting firm.
Okay.
And then we sold the product to a new entity.
Okay. So at this stage, what would you say is the biggest pain point at GitPod?
For me, for users, or
yeah, well, I would say as a company, kind of the biggest challenge that you're facing right now in this season of your business.
I think it's staying focused and believing in our strategy, because like we get a lot of people asking us for things that are more left and right, but not really our the thing we want to really do. And so if that are very big names, and then it's very tempting to go left or right, and just staying strong and saying that that's nice, but no, it's relatively hard, actually. Yeah.
How do you strike that balance? Because you have a vision as a founder, and you want to pursue something, build a product in a certain way, but yet there's also value in listening to your early adopters, but that, to your point, can also be very distracting. So how do you discern, whether an idea is actually useful and could be commercially beneficial versus, no, that's just a distraction at this point? Because that's a tough balance.
It is. Yeah, it is for sure. How do we do that? I mean, you can never be everything to everyone. So that's for sure. So we have this. What we want to do, we want to build a product that works for 90% of the software engineers out there. And so if we were, being sidetracked, for instance, partnering with a large enterprise. So that's basically what I mean. You have large enterprises, they knock on your door and say, hey, we need something like that. It's pretty cool and shouldn't be too hard to build it into our infrastructure, but we need this, that. And so then you have an engineering team of a certain size, and you need to decide, okay, do we take our time to innovate and build out the vision? Like, that is what we got, also the VC money for. That was our pitch. Or do we say, okay, this is too tempting. We are, trying to close this customer and spend our time on that. But then, we have a half-ready product. Like a very ready product for that particular customer. But the question is that then, is that scalable? Does that work for other companies as well?
I see. A question just popped into my mind, and I'm curious if it's relevant. You're talking about how, developers and engineers have preferences in their workspace and the way they set things up. Do you see that there are cultural differences? You're in Germany, so when you're working with German engineers versus East Indian engineers versus American engineers, like, are there cultural differences among engineers in the way that they work? Or let me ask this way: do the cultural differences permeate into the way that they work as developers?
They are cultural differences, but they are not significant enough. Like, the individual differences are much more important. So I will find, both characters, like the early adopters who just love the idea and the one who's very skeptic. I will find those personas in every culture.
I see. Okay. Well, that makes sense. I'm curious, has COVID impacted your business in any sort of negative way?
Not at all. I mean, we are a fully remote company. We've been that from the first day. I mean, we founded it last year, so the pandemic was already going on. But no, I think in many ways it was positive, or I don't really know. Like, for instance, the fundraising phase, we did some fundraising around that time, and I think usually I would have had to travel to the Bay Area and then schedule a week of meetings, and then wouldn't have been as effective as having all these Zoom meetings. Like, I've met so many interesting people through Zoom last year. Like, there's no way I could fit that into into a year if I had to do that physically.
Are you building up some Zoom fatigue?
I do, but still, like, there is a positive side that you can just easily meet so many people. And raising, we raised now $30 million just raising that from your desktop without going into a single airplane, or it is.
It's like sitting there in your living room, you're wherever, right? Like, that's just it's unbelievable that that's even a thing. And so, this is slightly off topic, and I do want to get into fundraising, but do you think that will continue? Like, do you think in a post-COVID world, everybody's like, that was kind of convenient? Do you think that'll continue, or do you think it'll go back to more the in-person, where you're expected to fly to the Bay Area and have in-person conversations, et cetera?
I think it will continue a lot, but the in-person meetings are important, but they will be less frequent and less important, I think.
Yeah. So maybe one instead of multiple. For example.
When you are further down, the discussion, then you probably should have a real meeting.
Yeah, that makes sense. I personally prefer them. So I appreciate the convenience of remote meetings, but I actually prefer to be in person. There's something about the connection that you can make. And I would also say that when you meet somebody in person, it kind of changes the future remote meetings in a way, because you'd know more of the essence of that person. You've met them in person. You just know more about their essence, like those little details that aren't conveyed on a Zoom call, and that makes a difference.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I even haven't met most of the teammates. We've hired a lot of people now. We are full remote. We have people from Australia even, and South America and Canada, and of course all over Europe. And most of them I have not met physically yet. So we are still, looking forward to the first on-site where we can meet everyone.
I can very much relate. Our team is dispersed as well, and we're very much looking forward to getting together. I think that would be really rich. So hopefully we can do that this year sometime. Let's talk about fundraising a bit. Is this your first time raising funds, or is this your first business that you've raised funds for?
Yes. So we started, like, the spin-off was was something we decided later last year to do that. First, we tried to raise money on the other entity like Typefork, which was also has also really good, well-working consulting business.
Okay.
And so I started fundraising there, and that was before COVID, like it was about the time when it started, like early last year. And then we were pretty close with one European fund, and it looked all good. But then that fund had issues regarding COVID and need to go back. And so then we took the time, and I had we had a new co-founder joining, and who came from the VC world and really helped big time with fundraising, knows lots of people and so on. And then we the second phase for fundraising went much smoother.
I see.
And but then at that time also, because we decided, hey, we would do that on a fresh entity. So feedback we got was due diligence wise, it is a bit of a nightmare to invest into an existing company that has so many contracts with large corporations already, like Typeforks is doing business with really large international companies. So those contracts are maybe not so cool.
So for anybody, for any founder that's interested in raising funds, how much scrutiny would you say was placed on you and your co-founders as individuals, looking at your level of competence in this space, your history, et cetera, versus the product, the idea, the potential?
Yeah, super interesting question, actually. There were in the beginning, I was reaching out with cold emails because I haven't had any network in the VC world. I have a good network in the engineering world and the open source world and so on, but not VC world. And I basically sent out the more or less the same pitch that we then pitched 5 months later. And it wasn't bad. Like, I had some good discussions, and people were interested, and we were close to get a term sheet and so on. But it was totally different from the second phase, where basically you probably know that when there is a hot deal in the VC world, and everyone seems to know you already, and people reach out to you, and that was the case then later. So, but nothing really had changed. Like, it was just like there was this this hype, that went on. So it was the pitch was not different, and the product was not different, for sure. So I think just network is so important. Like, I think for me now, it would be super easy, I think, to raise money on a new idea, and so it was super hard 1 year ago, because I just no one knew me in the VC world. I didn't know how to do that and so on. And now I would go out with the confidence and go to the right people, and it would just be. And I think that's also what you see, like the companies that get lots of funding. Those are typically people who are already in this, community, more or less, or yeah.
That makes sense. I've not personally raised. My co-founder and I have considered it, but I have to say, one of the things that holds me back, and I think this is echoed by probably a good number of founders, is the feeling of the weight of responsibility to do well on behalf of the investors. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I already feel that in the sense of serving my family, in the sense of serving the staff that work for us, and making sure that they have security as much as possible and a good job, et cetera. So there's already a weighted responsibility on our shoulders. But in my mind, that adds a whole nother weight. And maybe it's just my ignorance in how it would feel and kind of what the expectations are from the VC. But how would you answer that? How would you, or what would you say to someone that is concerned about that aspect of fundraising?
I mean, you are also looking for a partner. Like I don't think it is good if the relationship with investors is more like, you feel like you are reporting only to them, but you also need to ask for stuff, like not only money, but also, help. Like we do this together. Yeah, I do that 24 or like 24/7 maybe, but in many cases it is. But
tell your secrets
I do
about
that.
How you pull
Maybe
that off.
I spend more time on that compared to the investors, but we are betting on the same thing. So I mean, besides that, I also spent a lot of money because we invested into this product 2 years with lots of engineers. So there was also just pure money.
You had a lot of skin in the game.
Yeah, but also, of course, my lifetime, which is, time is really also important. So I mean, I don't want to, just do something that, like, it is not this kind of relationship. And I don't think that happens often in the I'm in the developer tool space. And so if you partner with the right investors, then they really support you rather than telling you what to do. They don't really know better than you. They should not, actually, but they can give you feedback. They can challenge you. That's important. And then, yeah, it's a great partnership and advisory. So that's how it should work.
So you're saying that the posture is more of, we're standing shoulder to shoulder doing this together. We're all in this together, sink or swim. It's on all of this, versus like them sitting back and sort of looking at you to make all the decisions alone and carry the full weight of responsibility. Is that fair to say? Like, if in a situation where startups that are funded fail, by I guess the VC's definition, is it the idea of like, hey, well, we did this together. It wasn't any one person's fault. It just didn't work, but that's the gamble we took, and that's life.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I, as a CEO, I'm in charge of making a lot of decisions, and so, but also, yeah, the whole team, like everyone in the company is, for us, everyone is an owner, actually shareholder, and the investors are big shareholders. So yeah, we are in this together, and we need to, get this off the ground. So that's
Let's use that as a segue. And we have a guest question or a viewer question from Carlos, and it's a good question. I wanted to bring this up, so I'm glad he's asking. And I want to apply this to the way that he's asking, but also to you as well. He said, beside hard skills, what types of soft skills would you say that engineers in general should cultivate in order to be successful in today's workplace?
Good question as well. I think empathy is super important generally. I mean, not only for engineers, but I think that's one of the most important soft skills, I think, when you work in teams, when you work together, but also figuring out what's important for users, and how do everyone perceive working in the company, but also using the product and so on. So that's a really important skill. And then for engineers specifically, it is important to solve the right problems. So that's not a technical challenge, but have a good feel for this is not an important problem or not a problem at all. So I won't write a single line of code. I won't do this. Just have a kind of good taste of enough without being sloppy, something like that. This is important for startups specifically. I think in general, but for us it is super important. So we just we need to find the the biggest levers in order to move us forward.
Yeah. I want to piggyback on Carlos' question and talk more about this idea from a leadership perspective. And this may not be true of you, but I've worked with a good number of technical founders that were very, very bright from a technical perspective, but they began to struggle a little bit as the business grew, and they had to move more and more towards, call it a leadership role, call it a mentorship role, more of a people role. And they needed to upskill themselves in that area. What has been your experience with that? Because you have a technical background, right?
I do, yeah.
Yeah, and then you're obviously leading a growing company. So how has that played out for you personally?
I'm learning every day, and I partner with people who do these things also better than me sometimes. So that's important. The whole team is learning. Like, we are also growing. Like, the scaling is so, it does so many things with how you work, and we are iterating on the processes, like the development process and how we communicate. We just introduce goals and results, like OKRs, and working on that. And we are trying out different things, trying to copy others, but also at the same time understand where is that solving the problem we have. Like, we identify things, and we also try to be a bit ahead of the problem that could really, like, when you grow, you need to be aware that, okay, you need to be still also very inclusive, communicate asynchronously. That's a hard challenge. Like, as I said, we are in multiple time zones. How do you make it so that everyone feels very, involved in everything is transparent, and so that needs processes. And I am personally, I have to admit, I'm very, on the side of being very practical, like saying, when there is process that only is there for the process itself, then for me, it's alarming. I'm just like, I can't do this, it doesn't make sense. So, and I'm questioning it again. And so that's also a challenge sometimes, because sometimes you just have to establish a habit around things. You just have to do it for some time in order to just feel it, and then it also doesn't, it's no longer so painful if you do it, and it becomes a habit, then it's clear, and you just do it, and everyone knows what you are going to do, and that is also important, and transparency. So I think I want to learn there. And I think that's more important than being, perfect already. For sure. And, but definitely interesting challenges. Like, company building is a very interesting challenge. Yeah. And it's not so clear as building products sometimes, because, it's everything feels more. Everything feels so much softer, and you can't just press a button and then something happens, but you have you have to do it a couple of times, and communicate, over communicate, and try different things, and
It makes me wonder who would be more successful between a group of predominant left brain thinkers trying to adopt some right brain methodologies, or a group of right brain thinkers trying to adopt some left brain methodologies. I'm not really sure who's better at jumping back and forth, but it's it's going to be a challenge in an engineering organization to implement some of those soft skills.
Yeah, it is, but I'm not alone. So that's the key here. We are a larger team, and everyone has experience, have a different angle or perspective on that, and we are doing this together. So that works pretty well. And so I think it's important that you establish the structures and processes, but I think the big part of the leadership also is just being clear about the vision, just reiterating that, and knowing what is right, and what should we not build.
Sure.
And then also helping everyone to see that picture and that, that future.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what challenges you the most personally.
At the moment, also a bit balancing the family stuff with the company stuff.
Okay.
Like my kids, live with me, and I just need to take care of a bit of them. And then of course the pandemic is also not helping with like a work-life balance. Like I would love to see more friends. I would love to go more, out and so on. So that,
Yeah.
I think that is sometimes a bit, I would get more energy also in general if that was balanced out better. But I think it's getting better now. So I'm living in the north of Europe, where winter time is dark and cold and wet, and now it's getting better. So
That's
I've
nice.
been out today doing kite surfing session, which I really enjoyed. So that helps.
That's great. And I know it's 7:30 there, and you owe your kids dinner, as you mentioned off the air. I'm just curious. I want to go slightly deeper on this, and then we'll wrap up. What are you doing? This is a challenge that many founders echo. This idea of whatever we want to call it, work-life balance, or not overlooking our families. It's a struggle, and it kind of goes into the question I asked earlier about the pressure that you might feel as a founder. But what steps would you, I guess, are you doing, or would you suggest, even if you were to advise yourself and by way of that, other founders, to sort of help with that, especially if your intent is to play the long game? Like if you want to do this for 10, 20 years, we have a finite amount of time with our kids. Ideally, they grow up, leave, and live their own successful lives. So like, how do you balance that, especially in this final stretch of their youth?
It's more a state of mind rather than really a time issue. Like it's more like this, I just need to work on my perspective on work and, quality time with my kids and so on. And what I sometimes struggle with is that when I have quality times with my kid, that I still, think a bit about, I think I need to, answer that email or do this and that. And so I'm working on that, just being fine that there is stuff to do.
Yeah.
I'm just not doing it now, just being more in the moment and so on. So that kind of stuff.
Present.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm 45 now. I've been working a lot for many years. So, and I have read a lot of books about managing my psyche regarding burnout symptoms and things like that. I actually have even bi-weekly meetings with a coach that helps me reflecting on this stuff and so on. I think that's, when this is super important. I have to work, just function as a CEO. The whole company needs a properly functioning CEO.
Right.
So any kind of whatever it is your, maybe not weak point, but the development area, you should seek out for advisory. You should seek out and just get people in helping you with this. This is
that's
this
good.
is important.
I'm seeing, as I interview founders, I'm seeing common threads emerge, and that's one of them. Almost everybody that I speak to recommends some sort of a business coach, a mentor, even therapy. From a mental health perspective, and that makes sense, because if you're out of balance in any area of your life, it can't help but impact other areas. So that's just logical. I think that makes a lot of sense. But I don't know that I realized that was so commonly adopted among founders until I started having more conversations. But I just find that very interesting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a good idea, not only for founders, but founders are often, under a bit more pressure and demand, and so balancing that is important.
Yeah. Let me end with this question. If you were to go back in the past, and you can pick the time period, 5 years, 10 years, and you had a conversation with your younger self, what advice would you give yourself based on what you've learned and experienced since then?
Founder-wise, I guess, right?
Well, you can pick. It can be on the personal side. You can pick.
I mean, I've learned a lot in this time. So if I were, taking a shortcut, I wouldn't learn this stuff.
Yeah, it's not to say that you would do it differently, because there is value in that experience. I'm trying to discern or to boil out.
Okay, I got it.
The lessons.
The most important advice.
Yeah.
For me, partner with someone who is a business person. Like I have a really good co-founder called Johannes, and I mentioned him earlier. He's from the VC background, and we are very complementary. So we work in harmony, but also he's really good at stuff that I don't enjoy too much, and I'm good at stuff that he doesn't do. And I think, especially when you do a business like this one, it is really good to have a partner like that. And not only technical founders. So I think that is, I knew that back then already, because we know that's why we made this decision also. But I think that was a very important step in the last year that helped a lot.
What I also see as a prerequisite to that is getting to the place on a personal level where we can say, I'm just not that good at these things. And that's okay, because other people are. I think that there's, at least in my life, there was seasons in my life, especially when I was younger, that it was difficult for me to admit that, So I feel like that's a prerequisite to getting to that point.
Yeah, and it is, for CEOs, the expectations often are, hey, you do everything well, and you have to do everything on your own first. Also, that's the idea. Like, and entrepreneurs, they do everything, build something up, and then they hire someone who takes it over. But you can't be great in everything, and I think it's good to acknowledge that and then seek for help and advice or partners.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Sven, we're getting close to 8 o'clock in Germany. Your boys are, I'm sure, starving. So I want to let you go, but I appreciate you being so gracious with your time. You've had a lot of experience, and you've shared a wealth of information here. So I appreciate that. We do have the links to your LinkedIn and to GitPod on the landing page. Any other locations where somebody could reach out if they wanted to say hello, or potential users of your product as well?
I think those channels work well. We are on GitHub. GitPod is open source. Of course, Twitter.
Perfect. And GitPod is gitpod.io.
Correct.
To make that clear. Great. Well, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it. Hope you have a good evening.
Thank you, Jim. Bye-bye.
Cheers.